The alarm screamed across the bridge of the Imperial Command Station. Emperor Kale stood before the massive viewing screen, his golden robes flowing behind him as he watched the data streams pour in. Something had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their system. "Report," Kale commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Admiral Yuna stepped forward, her face pale as she read from her data pad. "My lord, we have detected a single vessel. It's massive, larger than our biggest battleships." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Show me." The main screen flickered and displayed a distant image of the unknown ship. It was unlike anything in their database. The hull was dark gray, almost black, with smooth lines that seemed to flow like water. Strange markings covered its surface. "Where did it come from?" Kale asked. "Unknown, my lord," it appeared. "Without warning, no hyperspace signature matches our records." Commander Han, Yuna's second in command, looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving no response to our hails. The ship maintains complete radio silence." Emperor Kale had ruled the Valthorn Empire for 30 years. In that time, no one had dared to enter their space without permission. The Empire controlled 47 star systems and had the strongest fleet in known space. This intrusion was not just surprising. It was impossible. "Send the third battle group to intercept," Kale ordered. "I want that ship stopped before it gets any closer to Nexus Prime." Admiral Yuna nodded and began giving orders. Within minutes, 20 of their most advanced warships were racing toward the mysterious vessel. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. On the bridge of the unknown ship, Captain Dong stood quietly watching the approaching Imperial fleet. His dark eyes showed no emotion as he studied the tactical display. The bridge around him was clean and efficient, with soft blue lights casting shadows on the walls. "Captain," said Lee, his tactical officer, "the Imperial ships are taking attack positions. They're demanding we stop and surrender." Dong remained silent for a moment. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations with calm precision. These were not panic soldiers. They were professionals who had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Continue our approach," Dong finally said. "Maintain current speed." "Sir, they're powering weapons," Lee reported. "Let them." The massive ship continued its steady journey toward the capital world. It did not speed up. It did not slow down. It simply moved forward like nothing could stop it. Back on the command station, Emperor Kale watched the standoff with growing anger. "Why aren't they responding? Who are they?" Dr. Bay, the Empire's chief scientist, had been running scans on the unknown vessel. His findings made his hands shake as he approached the Emperor. "My lord," Dr. Bay said carefully, "I've analyzed the ship's hull markings. The symbols, they match records from our archives." "What archives?" "The old files, my lord, from the Great Purge 200 years ago." The Emperor's face went white. "That's impossible. We destroyed them all." "The markings are Terran, my lord." "Human?" A deadly silence fell over the bridge. Every officer present knew the story of the Great Purge. The humans had been a troublesome species that refused to bow to Imperial rule. They had been wiped out completely. Every world burned, every ship destroyed. It was one of the Empire's greatest victories. "Humans are extinct," Kale said through gritted teeth. "We made sure of that." Perhaps not all of them, my lord. Admiral Una felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered the stories her grandfather had told her about the war against the humans. They had been fierce fighters, never giving up even when facing impossible odds, but they had been primitive compared to the Empire's technology. Admiral, Commander Han called out. The third battle group is in position. They're requesting permission to fire. Una looked at the Emperor, who nodded. Grimly, tell them to disable the ship. I want answers. The Imperial warships opened fire with precision weapons designed to knock out engines and weapon systems. Bright energy beams lanced through space. Toward the dark ship, every beam struck the vessel's hull. Every beam was absorbed harmlessly by invisible shields that shimmered briefly before fading. Impossible, whispered Commander Han. The human ship had not even slowed down. It continued its approach as if nothing had happened. The Imperial weapons, the most advanced in known space, had done absolutely nothing. Captain Dong smiled slightly as he watched the Imperial fleet's confused response to their failed attack. Lee, open a channel to the Imperial command. Channel open, sir. Dong's image appeared on the main screen of the Imperial command station. He was a man of middle years with calm, intelligent eyes. He wore a simple uniform without decoration. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. I am Captain Dong of the Terran Coalition ship Retribution. We have come to collect what you owe us, Emperor. Kale stepped forward, his face red with rage. You dare threaten the Valthorian Empire? We destroyed your pathetic species centuries ago. No, Dong replied calmly. You enslaved our people. You took our children, you stole our worlds, but you did not destroy us. We have been waiting. We have been preparing, and now we have returned. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial bridge in stunned silence. Admiral Una stared at the screen where the human captain's face had been. Something about his eyes had disturbed her deeply. They were not the eyes of a conqueror or a madman. They were the eyes of someone seeking justice. My lord, she said quietly, if they survived all this time, if they've had 200 years to prepare. Silence, Kale snapped. One ship cannot threaten our entire empire. Send the entire Fifth Fleet. Destroy that vessel immediately. But even as he gave the order, the Emperor felt a cold fear growing in his chest. The human ship was still approaching Nexus Prime. Its weapons were still unknown, and somewhere in the back of his mind, he remembered old stories about human stubbornness and their refusal to surrender. On the Retribution, Captain Dong watched the Imperial fleet scrambling to position more ships in their path. He had known this moment would come. Every human aboard his ship had dreamed of it. Their ancestors had died for this. Jance. Lee, how long until we reach optimal position? 6 hours, Captain. And the other ships? Standing by, sir, waiting for your signal. Dong nodded. The Empire thought they faced one ship. They had no idea what was really coming for them. The Retribution continued its steady approach toward the heart of the Empire that had tried to destroy humanity. Behind its dark hull, revenge waited patiently for the right moment to strike. The Fifth Fleet moved into position around the human ship like hunters surrounding dangerous prey. Admiral Una stood on the bridge of her Flagship watching the tactical display. With growing unease, 200 ships now surrounded the single human vessel, yet something felt terribly wrong. Admiral Commander Han reported, "All ships are in position. We have the alien vessel completely surrounded." Yuna nodded, but kept studying the enemy ship. Its design was unlike anything she had ever seen. The hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No visible weapons ports, no obvious weak points. It was as if the ship had been designed by minds that thought completely differently from their own. "Scan results?" she asked. "That's the problem, Admiral. Our scanners can barely penetrate their hull. Whatever material they're using, it's not in our database. The ship appears to be roughly 3 km long, but we can't determine crew size or internal layout." 3 km, that made it larger than their biggest dreadnoughts, yet it moved through space with a grace that defied its massive size. Emperor Kale's voice crackled over the communication system. "Admiral Yuna, you have permission to destroy that ship. Use whatever force necessary." Yuna hesitated. Something about the human captain's words bothered her. "We have come to collect what you owe us." What could that mean? "Sir," she said into her communicator, "perhaps we should attempt communication first. Learn what they want." "They want to threaten the Empire," Kale replied angrily. "That is all we need to know. Destroy them." But before Yuna could give the order, her communications officer looked up with surprise. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the alien ship. They're requesting to speak with you directly." "Put it through." Captain Dong's face appeared on the main screen. His calm expression had not changed despite being surrounded by an entire fleet. "Admiral Yuna," he said, "I believe we should talk. You are in no position to make demands." "Human," Yuna replied, though something in his tone made her curious rather than angry. "I am not making demands. I am offering you truth. Your empire has built itself on lies. Would you like to know what really happened during your great purge?" Yuna glanced around her bridge. Every officer was listening intently. Stories of the Great Purge were taught in every imperial school, but they were always brief. The humans had refused to submit. They had been destroyed. End of story. "Speak," Yuna said. Dong's image was replaced by a data stream. Names began scrolling across the screen. Thousands of them, then tens of thousands, all human names with dates and locations. "These are the records of humans taken during your Great Purge," Dong explained. "Not killed, taken, children separated from parents, adults forced into labor camps, entire families shipped to work in your mines and factories." Commander Han stepped closer to the screen. "These could be fabricated." "Check your own archives," Dong replied. "Search for classification 7 files from that period. Your empire kept careful records of its slave labor." Admiral Yuna felt her stomach turn. Classification 7 files were the highest level of imperial secrets. She had never seen any, but she knew they existed. "Even if this is true," she said carefully, "that was 200 years ago. What do you want now?" "Justice, return of our people, recognition of our suffering, and reparations for what was stolen from us." "Impossible. The Empire will never." "The Empire will listen," Dong interrupted, his voice growing hard for the first time. Because you have no choice. Yuna was about to respond when her sensor officer called out in alarm. Admiral, we're detecting power fluctuations. Throughout their ship, energy readings are off our scale. On the screen, Captain Dong smiled. Slightly, Admiral, your ships are brave, but they are also very fragile. I suggest you pull them back to a safe distance. Are you threatening us? I am offering you a demonstration. Before Yuna could respond, the human ship began to glow, a soft blue light spread across its hull, growing brighter. By the second, every Imperial sensor array screamed warnings as energy readings climbed beyond anything they had ever recorded. All ships pull back, Yuna ordered. Emergency retreat, the Imperial fleet, scattered as the human ship's glow reached blinding intensity. Then, suddenly the light focused into a single beam that lanced out toward the system's edge. The target was a small dead moon that orbited the outermost planet. The beam struck the moon and held steady for exactly 3 seconds. When the light faded, the moon was gone, not destroyed, completely disintegrated, where a celestial body had existed for millions of years. There was now only empty space and scattered dust. The silence on Admiral Yuna's bridge was complete. Every officer stared at their instruments, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Impossible, whispered Commander Han. The energy required for that. It would take our entire fleet working together for hours, and they did it in 3 seconds, Yuna said quietly. Captain Dong reappeared on the screen. His ship had returned to its normal dark appearance, but everyone now knew what power lay hidden beneath that innocent-looking hull. That was a moon roughly the size of your capital city. Dong said conversationally, I wanted you to understand what we could do to Nexus Prime if we chose to. Emperor Kale's voice exploded over the communication system. Admiral, why did you not attack, destroy that ship immediately? Yuna looked at the empty space where the moon had been, then back at the human ship. My lord, I respectfully suggest we hear what they have to say. Coward, I am relieving you of command. General Tay will take over the fleet. Yuna closed her eyes. General Tay was a good soldier, but he thought only in terms of overwhelming force. He would order a full attack and thousands of Imperial sailors would die uselessly. Admiral, Commander Han said quietly. What are your orders? She looked around her bridge at the officers who had served with her for years. Good people who trusted her judgment. She thought about the moon that no longer existed and the calm certainty. The human captain's voice. Stand down weapons, she ordered. All ships maintain distance, but do not attack. Admiral, that's a direct violation of the Emperor's orders, Han warned. I know. Yuna turned to face her crew. I've served this empire for 25 years. I've never questioned an order before. But I will not send you to die for nothing. On the Retribution, Leia watched the Imperial fleet's confused movements. Captain, their admiral seems to be defying orders. Some ships are standing down while others are still in attack formation. Dong nodded. Admiral Yuna is wiser than her emperor. Begin the next phase, sir. Send the signal to our people throughout the empire. It's time they knew we're here. Across 47 star systems, hidden communication devices suddenly activated. In slave quarters and work camps, in factories and mines, humans who had been waiting for generations, received the same message. This is Captain Dong of the Terran Coalition. The time of hiding is over. Rise up. Help is coming. On the industrial world of Kyler on Fur, a woman named Saul looked up from her workstation as the message played in her ear. Around her, other humans stopped what they were doing. For 200 years, they had passed down stories of the home world, of ships that would return someday to free them. Saul smiled and reached for the tools she had hidden long ago. It was time to remind the Empire why they had feared humans in the first place. Captain Leia reported, "We're receiving confirmation signals from 34 systems. The rebellion has begun." Dong watched the Imperial fleet's frantic movements as reports of uprisings flooded their communication channels. The Empire was about to learn that the war they thought they had won long ago was only now beginning. Emperor Kyle paced like a caged animal in his throne room, the massive chamber built to intimidate visitors with its golden walls and towering statues, now felt like a prison. Reports flooded in from across the Empire, each one worse than the last. 17 worlds are in rebellion, General Tay reported, his scarred face grim. Industrial production has stopped on Kellen 4, Nexus 7, and the mining colonies. The slaves are destroying equipment and barricading themselves in secure areas. How is this possible? Kale demanded. We controlled these populations for 2 centuries. Dr. Bay stepped forward nervously. My lord, it appears the humans had hidden communication networks we never detected. The signal that triggered these uprisings came from their ship. General Tay slammed his fist on the table. One ship, we're letting one ship destroy our empire. Perhaps so, said Minister Locke, the Empire's chief advisor. We should consider their demands. If they truly have evidence of illegal enslavement, illegal. Kale whirled on him. We are the Empire. We define what is legal. Yes, my lord, but the Galactic Council. Might the Galactic Council can burn with the rest of them. Kale turned to General Tay. Take command of every ship in the system. I want that human vessel destroyed within the hour. General Tay grinned. He was a simple man who believed every problem could be solved with enough firepower. It will be my pleasure, my lord. As the general rushed away to take command, Dr. Bay approached the Emperor with a data pad. My lord, I've been studying the weapon. They used to destroy the moon. The energy signature is unlike anything. Our science, meaning their technology, is far beyond ours, perhaps centuries ahead. If they've had 200 years to develop in secret. Kale grabbed the scientist by his robes. Are you saying we cannot defeat them? I'm saying we don't understand what we're facing. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Retribution, Captain Dong watched the Imperial fleet reorganizing under General Tay's command. The Admiral's ship had been pushed aside, and now a massive battleship was taking position at the center of the formation. Captain Lee reported. The new Imperial commander is General T. He's ordering all ships to attack position. What do we know about him? Brutal but effective. He led the suppression of the Altair rebellion 15 years ago. No prisoners were taken. Dong's expression hardened. Then he's exactly the kind of leader this empire deserves. The Imperial fleet now numbered over 300 ships. Every vessel the empire could gather was moving into attack formation around the lone human dreadnought. It should have been overwhelming force. Against impossible odds. Sir, asked Leia, should we contact the fleet? Let them know we're not alone, not yet. Let them make the first move. On Kalon 4, Saul crouched behind an overturned mining cart as Imperial guards fired energy weapons down the corridor around her. Dozens of human workers had barricaded themselves in the main processing facility. Saul called out Min, a young man who worked in the ore refineries. The guards are calling for reinforcements. We can't hold them off much longer. Saul checked her improvised weapon, a mining laser rigged to overload and explode. We don't need to hold them off, we just need to destroy the processing equipment. She had been planning this moment her entire life. Her grandmother had told her stories about Earth, about humans who lived free under open skies. Those stories had kept hope alive through generations of slavery. Is it true? Min asked. Are there really human ships coming? The message came from Captain Dong himself. Saul replied. Our people kept their promise. They came back for us. An explosion echoed through the facility. As the guards blasted through another barricade, Saul knew they only had minutes left. Min, take the others and secure the main reactor. If we're going down, we're taking this whole facility with us. Back in space, General T stood on the bridge of his flagship, the destroyer, and studied the tactical display. The human ship sat in the center of his formation like a trapped animal. All ships report ready, his aide announced. Target their engines first. Tay ordered. I want them crippled, not destroyed. The Emperor wants prisoners. Sir, Admiral Yuna is requesting permission to speak with you. Denied. She had her chance. Tay smiled coldly. Begin the attack. 300 Imperial warships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Retribution lit up like a miniature star as thousands of energy beams converged on the human vessel. For a moment, the human ship disappeared entirely behind the brilliant light of the attack. General Tay watched with satisfaction as his fleet poured enough firepower to level a continent into their target. Cease fire, he commanded. After 30 seconds, the weapons fell silent and the light faded. General Tay expected to see debris, maybe a crippled hulk leaking atmosphere. Instead, the Retribution hung in space, exactly as before. Its dark hull showed no damage, no scorch marks, no signs that it had been attacked at all. Impossible, whispered Tay's aide. Sensors, Tay barked. Damage report. No damage detected, sir. Their shields absorbed everything. General Tay felt something cold settle in his stomach. His entire fleet had just fired everything they had at one ship, and they might as well have been throwing rocks at a mountain. On the Retribution, Captain Dong had not even moved during the attack. The ship's shields had handled the Imperial firepower so easily that the bridge crew barely noticed. Shall we return fire, Captain? Lee asked. No, but I think it's time they understood what they're really facing. Dong touched a control on his command chair. Throughout the ship, systems that had been hidden began to activate. The Retribution had not come alone to this system. It had simply arrived first. Around the Imperial fleet, space began to shimmer. One by one, human ships materialized out of nothing. They had been there all along, hidden by cloaking technology the Empire couldn't Even detect. First 10 ships appeared. Then 20, then 50. Within minutes over 100 human vessels surrounded the Imperial fleet. Each one was as advanced as the Retribution, bristling with weapons the Empire had never seen. General T stared at his tactical display in horror. His fleet was now outnumbered and outgunned by an enemy with technology far beyond their understanding. "Sir," his communications officer said shakily, "we're receiving a transmission from the human ship." Captain Dong's face appeared on the main screen. His calm expression had not changed, but his eyes now held the promise of judgment. "General T," Dong said quietly, "you have one chance to surrender. Order your ships to stand down and we will show mercy." "Never," T snarled. "The Valtheran Empire does not surrender to anyone." "Then you have chosen poorly." Transmission ended. Around the Imperial fleet, the human ships began to move into attack formation, their weapons powered up with the same blue glow that had destroyed the moon. On Kellen IV, Sol heard the guards breaking through the final barricade. She closed her eyes and thought about the stars her grandmother had described. Soon she would see them herself, but instead of weapons fire she heard something else, the sound of the guards screaming in fear. Their voices faded as they ran away. "Sol," Min called out excitedly, "look." Outside, Sol ran to the window and looked up at the sky. High above the planet, lights were moving among the stars, ships were fighting, and for the first time in her life the humans were winning. "They came," she whispered. "They really came." In space above, the liberation of humanity had begun. The first human ship to fire was the TCS Vengeance, commanded by Jin. Her target was General Tay's flagship, the massive dreadnought that had led the attack on the Retribution. The blue energy beam struck the Imperial ship's shields and tore through them like paper. But the beam didn't destroy the ship. Instead, it shut down every system. Aboard, lights went dark, engines died. Weapons powered down, the mighty destroyer became a floating piece of metal in seconds. "Precise targeting," Captain Dong said, approvingly as he watched the battle unfold. "Disable, don't destroy. We're not here for revenge, we're here for justice." Across the battlefield, the human fleet moved with deadly efficiency. Each ship targeted Imperial vessels with surgical precision. Engines were disabled. Weapon systems were fried. Life support was left untouched. The message was clear: surrender and live, fight and be left helpless in space. General Tay found himself trapped on a dead ship, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows across his bridge. His proud fleet was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that could have destroyed them all in minutes. "Sir," his aide whispered, "they're demanding our surrender." Tay's face was red with rage and humiliation. "Signal the reserves, call in every ship from every system. I don't care if it leaves our borders defenseless." But even as he gave the order, Tay knew it was hopeless. The humans had technology that made the Empire's best weapons look like children's toys. How had they advanced so far in just 2 centuries? On the planet below, Seul and her fellow rebels watched the battle through the facility's communication center. Imperial news broadcasts were in chaos as reporters struggled to understand what was happening. "This is incredible," Min said, staring At the tactical display, look how they move. Like they're dancing instead of fighting. Sewell nodded. The human ships flowed through space with a grace she had never seen in Imperial vessels. They seemed to anticipate each attack before it happened. Attention all humans on Kellenfer. Voice suddenly spoke from the communication system. This is Commander May of the TCS Liberation. Imperial forces on your world are surrendering. You are now under the protection of the Terran Coalition. Saul felt tears running down her face. Free. After 25 years of slavery, she was finally free. What happens now? Min asked. Now we help our rescuers, Saul replied. There are still millions of our people scattered across the Empire. The work isn't finished. In the Imperial Palace on Nexus Prime, Emperor Kale watched his empire crumble in real time. Reports flooded in from every corner of his territory. Human uprisings were spreading like wildfire. His fleets were being defeated wherever they encountered the mysterious human ships. My lord, Minister Locke said carefully, perhaps it's time to consider negotiations. Negotiations? Kale laughed bitterly. What do we have to negotiate with? They've demonstrated they can destroy us whenever they choose. Dr. Bay stepped forward with another report. My lord, I've been studying their battle tactics. They're not trying to conquer us. Every attack has been precisely calculated to disable rather than destroy, meaning they could have wiped out our entire fleet in minutes. Instead, they're giving us chances to surrender. They want something other than our destruction. General Tay's voice crackled over the communication system from his disabled ship. My lord, I'm requesting permission to activate the planet killer weapons. Kale's blood ran cold. The planet killer devices were the Empire's most terrible secret. Weapons that could crack a world's core and destroy an entire planet. They had only been used once during the rebellion on Altair Prime. Absolutely not, Kale replied. Those weapons are forbidden except in the most extreme circumstances. My lord, with respect, what could be more extreme than this? Kale looked around his throne room at the advisors and guards who had served him faithfully for decades. He saw fear in their eyes, but also a question. What kind of leader destroys planets rather than admit defeat? No, he said firmly. We will not become monsters to save our pride. On the Retribution, Captain Dong received reports from across the Empire. The liberation was proceeding faster than they had dared hope. Imperial forces were surrendering rather than face destruction. Millions of human slaves were being freed every hour. Captain Lee reported. We're receiving a communication from the Imperial Palace. Emperor Kale is requesting a ceasefire. Put him through. The Emperor's image appeared on the main screen. He looked older than his years. His golden robes wrinkled in his face, drawn with exhaustion. Captain Dong, Kale said, I request a temporary ceasefire so we can discuss terms. The terms are simple, Dong replied. Release all human slaves immediately. Provide transportation to any who wish to leave Imperial space. Pay reparations for 2 centuries of forced labor, and submit to Galactic Tribunal for crimes against sentient beings. Impossible. The Empire cannot. The Empire is finished, Dong interrupted. You can accept this with dignity, or you can watch as we take apart your civilization piece by piece. Either way, Our people will be free. Kale closed his eyes. You want us to destroy ourselves? No, we want you to become better than you are. Admiral Yuna's voice suddenly broke into the conversation. Captain Dong, this is Admiral Yuna. I'm speaking without authorization, but I have a proposal. Both men looked surprised as the Admiral's image joined the conversation. From her disabled flagship, I will serve as an intermediary, Yuna continued. I have access to Imperial records that prove the enslavement of your people. I also have the respect of many Imperial officers who might listen to reason. Why would you help us? Dong asked. Because I've seen what we did to your people. I've read the classified files. What my empire did was wrong, and it's time to make it right. Emperor Kale stared at his admiral. Shock, do you know you're committing treason? No, my lord. I'm trying to save what's left of our honor. Captain Dong studied the admiral's face for a long moment. He saw sincerity there, and shame, and a desperate hope for redemption. Very well, he said finally. Admiral Yuna, you will help coordinate the release of our people. In return, we will allow Imperial forces to withdraw peacefully from liberated worlds. And after, Yuna asked, after we rebuild both our civilizations. On Kalen 4, Saul stood on the landing platform as the first human transport ships arrived. They were beautiful vessels, sleek and gleaming white. Nothing like the dark warships that had defeated the Imperial fleet. Saul called Dr. May as she stepped off the lead transport. I've heard about your leadership here. We need people like you to help coordinate the evacuation. Evacuation? Saul asked. Are we leaving? Only those who want to. Some humans may choose to stay and help rebuild these worlds into something better. Others will want to return to human space and see the stars our ancestors dreamed of. Saul looked up at the sky where human ships moved like guardian angels between the stars. For the first time in her life, she had a choice about her future. What's it like? She asked. Human space. Dr. May smiled. Free, we'll show you if you want to see. Saul nodded. She would help with the evacuation. First, make sure every human who wanted to leave could do so safely, but then she would finally see the stars her grandmother had told her about. The empire that had enslaved humanity for 2 centuries was falling apart, but something better was rising to take its place. The age of human freedom had begun. 3 weeks after the first battle, the Valthorian Empire was a shadow of its former self. On 47 worlds, humans walked free for the first time in 2 centuries. Imperial governors had fled or surrendered. The great slave camps that had powered the Empire's economy stood empty. Admiral Yuna stood in the conference room aboard the Retribution, surrounded by maps showing the liberation progress. Across from her, Captain Dong reviewed reports from the Coalition fleet. Commanders, Sector 7 is completely secure, reported Commander Jin via hologram. The last Imperial garrison surrendered this morning. We've evacuated over 2 million humans from the mining colonies. Excellent work, Dong replied. Any resistance, minimal. Most Imperial forces are more interested in getting home alive than fighting a war they can't win. Admiral Yuna looked up from her data pad. Captain, I have some concerns about the Outer Rim territories. Several Imperial commanders there are refusing to surrender. They've cut off communication and declared Independence. Pirates and warlords, Dong said with distaste. They think the empires collapse means they can carve out their own kingdoms. What do you intend to do about them? Clean them up, one by one if necessary. Dr. Bay, who had requested permission to study aboard the human ship, raised his hand nervously. Captain, if I may ask, how many ships do you really have? Dong smiled slightly. Enough. But surely there must be limits to your resources. The Empire spanned nearly 50 systems. How can you patrol and protect such a vast area? Dr. Bay, you're thinking like someone who wants to control territory. We're not here to rule. We're here to free our people and ensure they stay free. Lee, monitoring communications from her station, looked up with concern. Captain, we're receiving an emergency signal from the Bright Star system. The Imperial garrison there has taken human civilians hostage. Dong's expression hardened. Details. Commander Pax has barricaded himself in the planetary capital with approximately 10,000 human civilians. He's demanding safe passage off-world in exchange for their release. Admiral Yuna felt her stomach turn. She knew Commander Pax by reputation. Brutal man who had earned his rank through violence and intimidation. Captain, she said, Pax is unstable. If he feels cornered, he'll kill those civilians rather than surrender. Then we won't corner him. Dong turned to Lee. Signal the fleet. I want 3 ships to the Bright Star system immediately and prepare my shuttle, sir. Lee looked confused. Your shuttle? I'm going to talk to him personally. Captain, that's extremely dangerous. Admiral Yuna protested. Pax won't negotiate in good faith. Maybe not. But those civilians don't deserve to die because of his cowardice. On the Bright Star colony, Commander Pax paced frantically around the government building he had turned into a fortress. Through the windows he could see human civilians huddled in the central courtyard, guarded by his remaining soldiers. Sir, his aide reported, 3 human warships have entered the system. They're requesting permission to send a shuttle to the surface. Tell them no. Any ship that approaches this planet will be destroyed, sir. With respect, our weapons can't even scratch their shields. Pax grabbed the young officer by his uniform. Then we use the civilians. They won't risk killing their own people. But even as he said it, Pax knew he was trapped. The Empire was gone. His career was over. All he had left was spite and the desire to hurt his enemies. Before he died, incoming transmission, the aide announced. Captain Dong's face appeared on the main screen behind him. Pax could see the bridge of the human ship, clean, efficient, and radiating quiet confidence. Commander Pax, Dong said calmly, I'm coming down to speak with you alone. Are you insane? I have 10,000 hostages. Yes, you do, and we both know you're not going to hurt them. Don't be so sure about that, Commander. You're a soldier, not a butcher. You took hostages because you thought it would give you leverage, but deep down, you know you can't murder innocent people in cold blood. Pax felt sweat running down his face. Stay away from this planet or I'll. You'll what? Kill civilians, execute children. Is that how you want your story to end? The transmission ended, leaving Pax alone with his fears and his rapidly diminishing options. An hour later, a small shuttle descended through the atmosphere toward the government building. Pax watched it land in the courtyard, just meters away from the hostages. Captain Dong stepped out of the shuttle, alone just as he had promised. He wore a simple uniform and carried no visible weapons. Around him, the human civilians stared, in wonder and hope. "Let me pass," Dong called out to the Imperial guards. "Sir," one of Pax's soldiers whispered, "should we arrest him?" Pax studied the human captain through his binoculars. There was something about Dong's calm confidence that made the commander's hands shake. This was not a man who could be intimidated or bargained with. "Let him through," Pax ordered reluctantly. Dong walked through the courtyard, stopping to speak quietly with some of the civilians. A little girl tugged on his sleeve, and he knelt down to listen to what she had to say. When he stood up, he was smiling. "She wanted to know if you're really going to take us home." Saul translated. She had arrived on Brightstar the day before to help coordinate evacuations. "Tell her yes," Dong replied. "We're all going home." Inside the building, Commander Pax waited in his office with a dozen armed guards. When Dong entered, the Imperial soldiers tensed, but the human captain seemed completely relaxed. "Commander Pax," Dong said pleasantly, "thank you for agreeing to meet. I didn't agree to anything. You forced your way here. Actually, you let me through, which tells me you want to resolve this peacefully." Pax laughed bitterly. "Peacefully? Your people destroyed my empire, my career, my entire life." "No," Dong said quietly. "Your empire did that to itself. We just helped it along. What do you want?" "I want you to release the civilians and surrender your remaining forces. In exchange, I'll guarantee safe passage to any Imperial world that will accept you." "And if I refuse?" Dong's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes made Pax step backward. "Then we'll wait. And while we wait, your soldiers will start to wonder why they're following a man who holds children hostage. Eventually, they'll make their own decision about what kind of people they want to be." Pax looked around at his guards. Several of them were already looking uncomfortable. They had signed up to be soldiers, not kidnappers. "Think about it," Dong continued. "In a few hours, this will all be over. Those civilians will be free. Your soldiers will either be prisoners or refugees. The only question is whether you'll be remembered as someone who chose honor in the end, or someone who threatened children because he was afraid." Commander Pax closed his eyes. Outside, he could hear the voices of the hostages, humans talking quietly among themselves, parents comforting their children, people who had survived 2 centuries of slavery and now dared to hope for freedom. When he opened his eyes again, Captain Dong was still watching him with that same calm, patient expression. "If I surrender," Pax asked quietly, "what happens to my men? Those who want to return to Imperial space can do so. Those who want to start over somewhere else will be given that chance. And me, you'll face trial for your actions during the war. But you'll be treated fairly." Pax looked out the window at the civilians in the courtyard. Many of them were looking up at the building, fear and hope warring in their faces. "Damn you," he whispered. "Commander," Pax turned to his aide. "Signal all units, we're standing down." The last act of resistance in the bright star system ended not with violence but with a broken man finally finding his conscience as Imperial soldiers laid down their weapons and the hostages Walked free, Captain Dong stood in the courtyard and watched families reunite. Sir, Saul approached him. There's something you should know. The little girl you spoke to earlier. Her name is Lee. She was born in the slave camps, but her grandmother told her stories about Earth. She wants to become a starship captain like you. Dong smiled and looked around at the celebrating humans. Then we'd better make sure she has stars to explore. The liberation of the Valthorn Empire was nearly complete, but the real work, building a better future, was just beginning.